Hey, Sarah, how are you? I'll tee you up again just in case. We really appreciate you hopping on. And I was just saying, obviously, you wrote a great piece about how you became part of the story last night in the NBA at, basically the epicenter of what, the season ended up being suspended. First and foremost, how are you?
I'm tired. It's been a sleepless night, but I'm hanging in there and just waiting to find out what the next step is.
Yeah, what are the results, and when are you expecting results?
Right, we're expecting results sometime today. They're supposed to be trickling out slowly. There were 3 batches from the amount of people that were sent to the lab, and so I was in the last batch, and so it'll probably be the last rounds of results that come back. But again, sometime today. And whenever the results come back, obviously a positive test is not a good thing, but a negative test isn't exactly out of the woods either, because the virus has a 14-day incubation period, which means that even if I test negative now, I could end up, developing symptoms and actually being infected later on anyways. And so that's why we have to be quarantined for 2 weeks.
So, last night, obviously, Rudy Gobert was the first one to test positive. The breaking news this morning is that Donovan Mitchell, Jazz guard, has also tested positive. So I assume, Sarah, like you, along with all the other players, you have basically just been sort of, as you said, in quarantine, hanging out. I mean, you basically for the 14-day period until you find out the results, and even after you find out the results. What was it like last night being in the building when there was all this mass confusion about the game being postponed? Obviously, the players and everybody running back into the locker room. What was it like to be in that scene?
It was so surreal, and I've said it many times this morning already that it hasn't even really crossed into my mind or really hit me that the NBA is suspended and we're not even going to see NBA basketball for the foreseeable future, because everything that went on last night was so surreal. Just being in the dark for about 3 hours about what was going to happen, if I was even going to get tested. We're around these guys every day, talking to them in close proximity, and then finding out that it was Rudy, and then that the NBA suspended play, and not being able to walk down certain hallways that we're used to, and having law enforcement and state public health department officials walking through the arena while, the floor is empty. It was a very strange situation. I've never seen anything like it.
Do you think it was inevitable that this was going to happen? Because I kind of feel that way, and I feel like if you look at NBA players, and even if you just look at the flu and how the flu jumps around to NBA teams, did you in your mind just start to think, you know what, this is going to happen? I don't know who's going to be patient zero, but this thing is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about how many people these guys come in contact with. I mean, if you just extend it from being in an arena with 20,000 people, and then, you've got the media members that are traveling, the broadcast crews, all the team personnel that travel with the team. There's so many people and because this is such a contagious disease and it travels so quickly, of course it was inevitable to happen. The last few days, all of the media contingency, we're on, 11 commercial flights in the last week and a half, and we're saying, it's going to happen. Eventually it's going to happen. Someone's going to get it, and they're going to have to shut this down. It was a little bit surprising that it took a player getting it before it shut down.
Do you know, we're talking to Sarah Todd, the Deseret News. She's a Jazz reporter, was in Oklahoma City last night and has been part of the quarantine there. Do you know, so all of the players from both teams are basically, are they just at the hotels? They've all, obviously gotten testing done. Do you know what their status is in the foreseeable future?
Right. So the Thunder were able to leave the arena a little bit earlier. They were given sort of the non-high risk factor testing, checking for temperatures and symptoms and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the Jazz, because they were in direct contact along with myself and the broadcast team too, because we had direct contact with a confirmed case, that's why we had to be tested, and that's why the suggestion is to not fly publicly and to be quarantined for 14 days. It's precautionary for anybody that could have come in contact to self-quarantine for 14 days. But you're at a much lower risk of contracting anything if you haven't had direct contact, which by one of the health officials last night was defined to me as, hand-to-hand contact or being in like one-on-one interview style talking to someone for a cumulative amount of like 15 to 20 minutes. It has to be really direct contact to have a higher risk of actually getting the coronavirus. but there are, lower risk situations where it is going to happen too.
Sarah, so just shed some light on your situation. Do you have family back in Utah? Are you planning on going to see them? Are you stuck in Oklahoma City for 14 days? Like, can you shed some light on what you know?
Yeah. So we were really fortunate. The three writers that travel to cover the team, but we don't travel with the team. That's myself, Tony Jones from The Athletic, and Andy Larson from the Salt Lake City Tribune. In conjunction with both Oklahoma and Utah state health departments, along with Utah government officials and the Jazz, they've all pushed to get us back home so that we can be quarantined where we live, and so that our own state health departments can guide us what the next steps are. So we're all going to be on chartered flights today, heading back to Utah. Whether that's one or two flights for positively tested and negatively tested people, we're not exactly sure how it's going to work out, but we will be on chartered flights today.
Wait, back up, Sarah, one question. We will be, is that you, the Jazz, the broadcasting team? Give me, what is we will be on one or two flights?
Exactly. The team, everybody associated with the Utah Jazz, the broadcast crew, the writers, all of us, we will be heading back to Utah today. That time has not been 100% decided yet, and we're waiting on information. We're still waiting on test results, so it's a little bit up in the air. I don't personally have family in Utah. I just recently moved there. I'm originally from California, and so I'm not at risk of, anybody that I cohabitate with or anything, and I will just be locked in my apartment for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I guess there will be some Netflix going on there. I wanted to ask you this, Sarah, because I saw you tweeting about this last night. I was following sort of the story, your story, obviously there in the building last night. But one of the things that was kind of taking fire on social media was the backlash towards Rudy Gobert about the video that sort of resurfaced of him touching a bunch of microphones, kind of jokingly. I mean, he was trying to make light of the situation. I know you push back on people sort of hating on him for that. Could you expand on that? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah, first of all, one of the reasons that I'm pushing back on it is because straight from the mouth of the CDC officials and the state public health officials, that specific situation was talked about specifically to us, and it was described as an extremely low-risk situation that should not worry people. That is not the way that the virus is spreading most rapidly. The way that it spreads most rapidly is through what they call respiratory droplets. So you cough, you sneeze on someone, near someone, or you're breathing on someone, and respiratory droplets that you inhale, or, like I said, hand-to-hand contact. Those are the things that people are worried about. That's why there's so much emphasis on washing hands and staying 6 to 8 feet away from people. Those are the things that the health officials want to keep people from doing, because that's what's going to spread the disease most rapidly. And he was already leaning over the microphones and breathing on them. If anything was going to infect the microphones, that was going to be it. Him touching them, for a couple of seconds wasn't the problem. And Rudy Gobert is not a maliciously intended person. It's not like he leaned over and did that and thought, I'm going to infect everyone. Actually, it was kind of a snub at the idea that, you're trying to keep the media away from us, they're going to infect us. It was no, I'm not really afraid of you guys. I'm going to test these. I'm going to get out of here. It was not maliciously intended. And as someone who is being tested and could test positive, I have no ill will towards Rudy Gobert. The guy tested positive for coronavirus. I'm not mad at him.
So have you thought of it both ways? If you are a positive or you are negative, and what is your fear factor in both of these situations?
Yeah, because the biggest thing here for young, healthy people that's not the highest risk person for worrying about any sort of fatality. What you're worried about is spreading it to people who are at risk, who have, immune systems that aren't up to par, or who have a history of respiratory problems, who are older in age. And so the reason you want to be quarantined and the reason you want to catch it early is so that you don't spread it to the people who are actually at risk of complications. And so I'm not necessarily worried about myself, but I am glad that the testing is happening so that I can know whether or not to stay away from people, and that way I don't spread it to other people.
Well, Sarah, we really appreciate it. I know it's been a surreal time and obviously, can be very frightening, but we appreciate you giving us, a couple minutes here today to, share your story. And, we wish you best of luck in the future as far as health and everything else. Thanks again for giving us a couple minutes today.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.